Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Today, we continue with the Dhammapada verse on contemplating impurity, with the following stanza. One who lives observing purity, without restraining the senses, who lacks moderation in eating, is lazy, lacks diligence, Mara overwhelms such a person, like a weak tree before the wind. One who lives contemplating impurity, who well guards the senses, is moderate in eating, has faith and diligence, Mara cannot overwhelm them, like a rock before the wind. Some phrases, such as observing purity, will be explained further. This verse was spoken by the Buddha based on a story with a specific background. The story revolves around three brothers in a family. Commonly referred to as the three black brothers, the term Kala in Indian means black. They are named according to age: Malakala, eldest black; Makakala, middle black; and Kulakala, youngest black. In the scriptures, they are also referred to as great black, middle black, and small black. The three brothers were traders. The eldest and the youngest took on the responsibility of long-distance trading, leading a large caravan with many people and ox-drawn carts full of goods. Their caravan included servants and guards carrying swords and spears for protection. They traveled across various provinces and even went abroad for trade. The middle brother stayed at home to manage a large shop. At that time, organizing such trade operations indicated their wealth. The eldest brother's wealth was shown by the fact that he had 8 wives and was preparing to marry a 9th. But an unexpected event occurred. One day, as usual, the three brothers began their journey from the city of Satavia to the city of Savatthi, near the Jita's Grove Monastery. Their caravan consisted of hundreds of ox carts loaded with goods and a large escort. Along the way, they unexpectedly encountered a large group of people carrying offerings, flowers, and dressed in formal attire. The group's procession made the caravan come to a halt. The eldest brother called out to the group and asked, "Friends, where are you going so solemnly?" Someone in the group replied, "We are going to Jita's Grove to pay homage, offer alms, and listen to the teachings of the Blessed One." Upon hearing this, the eldest brother felt a stirring within, as if an ancient connection was awakened. He turned to the youngest brother and said, "Take care of the caravan, I want to go to Jita's Grove to meet the Blessed One." The youngest brother, though frowning, did not object. The eldest brother immediately got down, adjusted his clothes, and followed the group into Jita's Grove. He quickly joined the crowd and listened to the Buddha's sermon. Remarkably, during that teaching, the Buddha focused directly on the eldest brother, Mahakala, speaking about the dangers and fleeting nature of worldly pleasures. The eldest brother, who had 8 wives and lived in wealth, was deeply moved and immediately attained enlightenment. He asked the Buddha for permission to become a monk. The Buddha asked, "Do you still have parents?" The eldest brother replied, "Blessed One, our parents have passed away. I only have 2 younger brothers, one manages the store, and the other accompanies me on this trading journey." The Buddha instructed, "Then, return to inform your brothers so they are not taken by surprise and left without support." After bowing to the Buddha, the eldest brother returned to the youngest brother, who was waiting outside the monastery, and said, "Now I entrust all of my assets and trade to you in Middle Kala. I am going to renounce the world." The youngest brother cried out, "Oh, this is unfair. You can't just leave us like this." Despite his brother's objections, the eldest brother resolutely transferred all his wealth and immediately left to become a monk. The youngest brother, now left bewildered, stood in thought for a long time. Finally, he turned to the servants and said, "Take the caravan back home. I will follow my brother and renounce as well." He quickly ran into the monastery, following his brother to request ordination. However, the two brothers entered monastic life with completely different motivations. The eldest brother renounced with a firm resolve for liberation, having been awakened by the Buddha's sermon. In contrast, the youngest brother, Kulakala, had always been dependent on his elder brother. From childhood, every aspect of his life had been guided and arranged by his elder sibling. Therefore, upon seeing his brother's decision to become a monk, he felt lost, unable to imagine life without him. The youngest brother's motivation for renouncing was not the desire for liberation, but rather his fear of losing his lifelong support. Deep down, he hoped to convince his brother to return to their ordinary lives. Thus, his intention behind ordaining lacked any noble purpose. After ordination, while the elder brother, Mahakala, was diligent and fully committed to practicing the teachings, the younger brother was careless and negligent. Instead of attentively listening to the Buddha's teachings, he would watch the female devotees visiting the monastery, remark on their appearance, and often appeared restless and distracted. Other monks found his behavior disturbing, but because he was only a novice and hadn't taken full vows, they refrained from reprimanding him. While the Buddha taught, the younger brother failed to focus, instead looking around and commenting on others. In contrast, Mahakala, the elder brother, was sincerely devoted to study and practice. When the time came to prepare for the full ordination as a monk, Mahakala approached the Buddha and asked, "Blessed One, to fulfill the duties of a monk, how should one practice?" The Buddha replied, "There are two main practices, studying the teachings and applying them in practice." Mahakala said, "Blessed One, I am older now, and learning extensive teachings may be difficult. I know only the basics you have taught. Now I wish only to practice diligently for liberation. I realize that I have lived in sensual pleasures, so I need to focus on reflecting upon this matter." The Buddha advised him to go to the charnel ground to practice corpse meditation. At the charnel ground, there was a family responsible for handling corpses, arranging cremations or other rites as needed. Bodies burned in the pyre would sometimes convulse, emit smoke, and produce frightening crackling sounds. Poor people who couldn't afford cremation would choose sky burial, leaving bodies exposed for vultures to consume. While Mahakala practiced corpse meditation, the woman managing the charnel ground noticed a monk wandering among the trees and bushes. Observing carefully, she realized he was there to meditate. She approached him and said, "Venerable Sir, if you are here to meditate on corpses, please inform me, as I am the caretaker here." Secondly, she emphasized that, upon coming to the charnel ground, he should inform his monastery's head monk so that others know his whereabouts. Thirdly, before coming to the charnel ground, he should notify the village chief or local leader so the authorities are aware. The reason for this was that thieves would often hide stolen items in the charnel ground and return later to retrieve them when no one was watching. To avoid misunderstanding and demonstrate his integrity, it was essential for him to notify others before visiting the charnel ground. After the caretaker finished advising him, Mahakala expressed his gratitude and agreed to follow her instructions. He also asked her to inform him whenever a suitable body arrived for him to meditate upon. One day, a young and beautiful girl from a wealthy family passed away and was brought to the charnel ground for cremation. The family paid the caretaker to conduct the ceremony properly. The caretaker promptly informed Mahakala, who arrived and observed from a distance as she performed the chanting rituals. Afterwards, the body was prepared for cremation, with her luxurious clothes removed to be given to others. The flames flared up, and the body began to burn, with skin peeling away, fat melting down, and the face twisting into a darkened, contorted form. Mahakala witnessed everything, and each image deeply penetrated his mind. Afterward, he took leave of the caretaker and went to a secluded place for meditation. During his meditation, he deeply contemplated the impermanent nature of all things in the world. He realized that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent and that only a pure, tranquil mind brings true happiness. Thanks to the awakening of past virtuous karma, he attained insight wisdom and achieved the status of an arahant. After reaching this state, Mahakala returned to the monastery. The Buddha, with his omniscient wisdom, knew immediately that Mahakala had attained enlightenment. The Buddha informed the monks that he would lead them on a teaching journey to Mahakala's home village. Both Mahakala and his younger brother, Kulakala, would accompany the Buddha back to their village. Although Mahakala had attained enlightenment, none of the monks knew this except the Buddha. When they arrived in the village, the former wives of the two brothers decided to persuade their husbands to return to lay life. They approached the Buddha, requesting the honor of offering alms to him and the monks. The Buddha agreed and assigned one monk to go ahead and prepare. He chose Kulakala to go ahead and make the arrangements. Early in the morning, Kulakala returned to the village to set up the place for the alms offering. He prepared the seating arrangements, one place for the Buddha, another for the senior monks, and others for the monks so that the alms ceremony could be organized and dignified. This shows that every time the Buddha arrived at a place, preparations were always made in advance, rather than arriving suddenly. When arranging a Dharma offering event, the Buddha would often assign a monk to the host's house to ensure suitable seating arrangements. This was a custom from ancient times. On this occasion, he assigned Kulakala to go ahead for the preparations. Early in the morning, Kulakala arranged everything. But by the afternoon, he returned to the monastery dressed in lay attire. The reason was that his former wives had persuaded him to return, pulling at him, clawing at him, and doing all they could to shake his resolve for spiritual practice. Kulakala, with an unsteady mind, simply chuckled and then returned home, never to return to the monastery. At that time, it was common for new trainees who hadn't yet taken full vows to return to lay life. So the monks didn't view Kulakala's return as a significant issue, nor did they dwell on it. After the first alms offering, Mahakala's former wives took inspiration from Kulakala's wives. They approached the Buddha and invited him and the Sangha to their house for another alms offering ceremony, hoping to lure Mahakala back. However, this time, the Buddha chose another monk to go ahead for the preparations. After the alms offering, everyone returned, but Mahakala remained firm. When his wives returned and made even greater efforts to pull him back, becoming aggressive and insistent, Mahakala used his psychic powers to rise and fly through the roof, returning to the monastery, where he paid homage at the Buddha's feet. Before Mahakala returned, the monks who had gone back earlier were unaware of the situation and felt uncertain. They whispered to each other on the way back, "Yesterday, the Blessed One left Kulakala behind, and he returned to lay life. Now, the Blessed One has also left Mahakala behind after the alms offering. We don't know what will happen." This uncertainty spread among the monks as they wondered about Mahakala's fate. When the monks returned to the monastery and the Buddha prepared to deliver a sermon, Mahakala appeared, knelt, and paid homage to the Buddha. At that moment, the Buddha praised him and announced that Mahakala had attained the status of an arahant. The monks then understood the Buddha's insight and realized that he had foreseen this. The Buddha then recited a verse from the Dhammapada. One who lives perceiving purity, without restraint over the senses, indulging immoderately in food, and lazy, not exerting effort. Mara overpowers that one, as a weak tree before the wind. but one who lives seeing impurity, with restraint over the senses, moderate in eating, faithful and diligent. Mara cannot overpower that one. As a mountain before the wind. We should analyze the meaning of this verse. There are 4 main points in the verse. 1. Perceiving purity, or perceiving impurity. 2. Guarding the senses. Point 3. Moderation in eating. Point 4. Diligence. The core of this verse is perceiving purity or perceiving impurity. In ancient times, the term perceiving purity was used. But today, this meaning has evolved somewhat. When studying the scriptures, we should not cling only to the words, but understand the true meaning behind them. For example, yesterday, a lay follower asked the teacher, "What does it mean to practice meditation in the 4 postures: standing, walking, lying down, sitting?" The teacher explained that in the past, people used the terms standing, walking, lying down, sitting, but today, a clearer expression would be at all times, in all places, whether standing, sitting, or performing any action. One should maintain a meditative mind. This is similar to the way indigenous people pray. When they say, "May I have a day with 3 fires?" This signifies the desire for 3 meals in a day. Studying the scriptures does not stop at the words, but involves deeply understanding the meaning that the Buddha intended to convey. The phrase "a day with 3 fires" literally means cooking 3 times a day, symbolizing having enough food for 3 meals. However, its deeper meaning is that of sufficiency and abundance. For the indigenous people, cooking 3 times a day is not always an easy task due to challenging circumstances. Thus, this phrase carries a sense of wishing for a life of fullness, free from lack. Similarly, in the past, the phrase perceiving purity referred to looking at the body of the opposite sex with fascination. This stems from a natural instinct that nature has granted humans. For example, a woman may feel attracted when seeing a strong, healthy man, while a man may be captivated by a young and lively woman. This is a natural and common occurrence. In medical science, it is recognized that when men reach adulthood, testosterone levels trigger a natural attraction to the opposite sex. This is explained quite clearly in medical literature. Therefore, it has a biological basis when men tend to gaze at and enjoy the sight of the opposite sex's body. However, for women, the influence of hormones to be attracted to a mature, healthy man is not as clearly documented in medical literature that I have read. Therefore, I am uncertain whether this actually happens. Discussing and explaining such topics in the scriptures can sometimes be sensitive. So I ask for your understanding. Once, I read an article telling a story from the West. An older woman, about 60 years old, after taking a type of medication that made her feel stronger, shared that when she saw a young man, she felt goosebumps. That is, a thrill and interest. This led me to realize that women might also feel an attraction when seeing men, although medical science does not record this as clearly. Therefore, I am still unsure about the truth of this and sometimes don't even know who to ask for confirmation. However, to be fair and equitable, I believe that both genders can naturally feel attracted to one another. This is a very natural human instinct. Typically, society views women as the fairer sex. Only the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer had a different definition. Schopenhauer held negative views about women and never married. He passed away at 70. In a calm state while sitting at his table. Schopenhauer had a difficult childhood with a mother who was not kind, which may have influenced his lifelong views. In his philosophical works, he constantly criticized women. He once wrote that rather than calling women the fairer sex, They should be called the unfair sex because of their bodily characteristics such as narrow shoulders and wide hips, which he considered unbalanced. This was his personal and somewhat bitter view, as traditionally, people have seen women as the fairer sex. Art from ancient Greece has celebrated the female form, often through nude statues. Both men and women have been depicted in realistic art, and nude statues were regarded as a pinnacle of art. These statues are displayed in many places, from public squares to museums, theaters, and architectural structures. The portrayal of the human body in art has influenced Western culture, where people often dress to reveal the body. This has gradually become a trend and a characteristic in lifestyle. Once, I was speaking with a follower and raised the question of why South Asian men, who generally do not have particularly attractive bodies, often dress very conservatively, sometimes even with tightly buttoned collars and multiple layers of vests. Meanwhile, women, despite being more susceptible to cold, often dress revealingly. This seems contradictory. Men, who are strong and less prone to cold, dress conservatively, while women, who are more vulnerable to the cold, wear more revealing clothes. This is indeed something to ponder. You mentioned that nowadays, people have the notion that the more revealing the clothing, the more elegant it is. This is quite an odd notion and has sparked much debate. Influences from Western culture have gradually spread to Eastern countries, leading to changes in traditional modest dressing. I am concerned that this trend will reach a point that becomes unacceptable, as public dress increasingly lacks decorum. I truly do not know with whom to share this concern. It stems from the fact that the female body is inherently alluring, easily arousing desire. That is why in Eastern morals, women are advised to dress modestly and respectfully to avoid unwanted attention from the opposite sex. On the other hand, men dressing revealingly does not seem to raise as many concerns, perhaps because the male body does not carry as strong an allure. When men wear shorts or expose themselves, it rarely attracts criticism or censure. For women, however, revealing attire is judged more strictly because it easily draws inappropriate attention. This is clearly reflected in traditional Eastern clothing, such as the Japanese kimono or the Korean hanbok, both of which are very modest and display dignity. In Islam, the dress code for women goes to an extreme, with attire covering the entire body, leaving only the eyes visible. Due to such thick and enclosed clothing, Muslim women often suffer from chronic headaches, as the air is restricted, and they end up rebreathing their own exhaled carbon dioxide. This custom originates from ancient times when the Prophet Muhammad had many wives, some of whom were very beautiful. Some stories recount that people even gave their young daughters to him when they were very young, only 6 years old, and he raised them until they reached adulthood. One of these wives later became the one he cherished the most. Through these examples, we see clear differences in perspectives on clothing and views on modesty and allure in women across various cultures. Once, the Prophet visited a follower's home and was greeted by the follower's wife. He impulsively complimented her, saying, "You are beautiful." Immediately after, the wife requested a divorce from her husband so that she could be with the Prophet. In his sorrow, the husband approached the Prophet and said, "If you agree, I will divorce her so she can become your wife." The Prophet smiled and accepted. Thus, the couple divorced, and the woman became the Prophet's wife. The Prophet Muhammad had many wives, and managing them was a considerable challenge. After winning battles, during celebratory feasts, his warriors and followers often lingered, engaging in conversations with his wives. This troubled him greatly, prompting him to write in the Quran, "Do not linger or flirtatiously speak with the Prophet's wives, for this displeases the Prophet. Once the feast is over, depart. Additionally, he advised that wives and women, when interacting with men other than their husbands, fathers, or brothers, should cover their faces. From this teaching, the practice of covering the face became mandatory, later enforced to an extreme, allowing only the eyes to be visible. In some Muslim countries, failure to wear a face covering can lead to severe consequences, even incidents of acid attacks, which are frightening and tragic. In Islam, the strictness of face covering practices has reached an extreme level. However, in Eastern cultures, traditional morality has always encouraged women to dress modestly and respectfully. This has helped maintain social harmony for thousands of years. However, with the influence of Western culture, these views have gradually faded and changed. The influence of Western culture has made it easier for people to observe pure form, to gaze at the bodies of the opposite sex, particularly women. If everyone dressed modestly and respectfully, men would have fewer chances to gaze at women's bodies, preventing them from being psychologically stirred. But when women dress to display their bodies, many cannot avoid feeling stirred, except for those determined in their spiritual practice. This is precisely why today, the minds and spirits of many young people and men are weaker than in the past. They are often swayed because pure form is everywhere, making them easily moved, like a fragile tree in the wind. The concept of a fragile tree in the wind not only describes the vulnerability of people when facing temptation, but also conveys a deeper meaning about the chain reaction in psychology. When a person's soul is shaken by observing pure form, the body of the opposite sex, it sets off a series of other weaknesses. These weaknesses emerge in succession, leading to degradation, indulgence, and unhealthy behaviors. This phenomenon is akin to a key that unlocks a pathway to further deterioration. Many other psychological factors also operate similarly. For instance, arrogance can be the start of downfall. A person addicted to gambling or fond of drinking is likely to spiral into a chain of negative and destructive behaviors. Similarly, observing pure form is a stimulating factor, creating a chain reaction leading to further mistakes. In a society where displaying the female body becomes common, it is a clear sign that morality in that society is declining. Many consider this to be a matter of personal freedom. But if such freedom leads people to slide into depravity, then it is a misguided freedom. It should be noted that some countries often proclaim themselves as having the highest levels of freedom and tend to impose their views of freedom on others. However, living in these countries reveals that they have extremely strict laws in many areas, making people live under great restraint, fearful of committing any violations. They are bound by strict regulations to the extent that they can barely move. Thus, freedom in these countries exists only in areas that easily lead people to corruption and decay. Yet they consider this to be human freedom. This is a misguided freedom, a freedom leading to the loss of morality and core societal values. In contrast to Western countries, Eastern countries generally have more lenient laws, with fewer constraints on people in many areas. However, morally, the East is extremely strict, especially in rules aimed at preventing people from corruption and degradation. These two approaches to social management are completely different. While the East is often criticized as lacking freedom, the truth is that laws here are quite flexible and lenient. People are free to act without much obstruction from the law. However, society imposes strict moral standards, particularly in matters concerning the preservation of women's dignity and modesty. This still exists today, and in the hearts of many Vietnamese, the image of a modest, dignified woman is still cherished and respected. The question is whether this holds true for everyone. Many men seem silent when asked if they favor modesty. This may reflect the changing values and perspectives among today's youth. A teacher once shared a memory from his university days. A professor mentioned that his generation's era was vastly different from that of current students. He said that in the past, their happiness was seeing girls walking down the street with a gentle, modest, and reserved beauty. Nowadays, that has become rare. Today, people go out and see many young women dressing without the discretion of the past. This statement underscores the shift in cultural norms and values in relation to spiritual practice and morality. Gazing at the body of the opposite sex can easily cause people to waver, like a fragile tree in the wind. When a person's psyche becomes unsteady, they are easily influenced by harmful forces. Evil can intimidate people when there are vulnerabilities in their minds, through which unwholesome thoughts and other negative elements can easily slip in. This is not just a metaphor, it is a reality observed in many cases. Some people are capable of interacting with the invisible world or are affected by spiritual phenomena. This can happen when there is an open point in the human brain, allowing for external influences, as in cases of possession. A teacher once spoke with Dr. Lutan Dan, a doctor and expert in nutrition and micronutrients, and learned of a unique discovery that greatly surprised him. The doctor explained that the micronutrient zinc has a special property: it can close certain channels in the brain, preventing people from being affected by the spiritual world. The teacher asked for further clarification, and the doctor revealed that people who frequently see spirits, when supplemented with zinc, no longer see them. Similarly, those who hear voices or experience possession also stop experiencing these things when they take zinc. Notably, children who cry at night as if disturbed by spirits stop crying after a few days of taking zinc, as spirits can no longer affect their minds. This is a strange and noteworthy discovery, though further research is needed to determine its validity. According to the doctor, zinc seems to close certain channels in the brain. Similarly, in spiritual practice, if our minds have an opening, harmful influences can affect us, leading to erroneous thoughts that we believe we are generating ourselves. For instance, when we are angry, it may not be solely due to ourselves but rather an external influence acting upon an open weakness in our psyche. In Buddhist scriptures, demons are not merely an abstract concept but a real force capable of influencing the human mind. In the Nikaya Suttas on overcoming demons, the Buddha teaches that to disrupt the monks, demons would need to incite anger or arrogance in them, creating an opening through which the demons could enter and affect their minds. When the monks become angry, demons can enter the minds of lay people, provoking them to insult and provoke the monks, causing them to lose the purity of their practice. The Buddha taught monks to cultivate patience and compassion, preventing them from succumbing to anger and blocking demons from influencing them. When this approach failed, the demons shifted their strategy, influencing lay people to praise and offer gifts to the monks, sparking pride within them. When the monks became prideful, demons could infiltrate their minds and lead them astray. With profound insight, the Buddha taught monks to contemplate humility, seeing themselves as mere dust, so that they would not fall into pride, thereby thwarting demonic influence. This story illustrates that demons can only influence us when there is an opening, a psychological weakness, in our minds. Viewing the youthful, beautiful body of a woman can cause emotional disturbance, opening a door for demonic influence. This is why practices like impurity contemplation and maintaining mindfulness are vital in spiritual training. In the scriptures, demons are often referenced as external forces capable of influencing the human mind, leading individuals down erroneous and sinful paths. In today's society, when someone is unsettled due to the habit of viewing the bodies of the opposite sex, they can easily be lured by other temptations, referred to as demons in particular contexts. For example, someone addicted to drugs is influenced by the drug demon, those fond of alcohol are led by the alcohol demon, individuals with indulgent lifestyles may be haunted by the lust demon, sports fanatics jokingly by Maradona, film enthusiasts by Marilyn Monroe, music lovers by Madonna, gambling addicts by the gambling demon, violent individuals by the mafia, and racing fans by the marathon demon. A small psychological disturbance, a revealed weakness, can open a series of doors leading to downfall. A person who once led a decent life might, from viewing a single provocative image or an unwholesome film, spiral into a cycle of vice, moral decline, and personal disintegration. A teacher once encountered a case of a devout Buddhist family that was previously respectable and happy. One day, a friend gave the husband an inappropriate videotape. Out of curiosity, the husband watched it secretly at night. Over time, he became more depraved, drinking excessively and engaging with unsavory company, leading to divorce and family ruin. When the teacher met him again over a decade later, there was no joy in his eyes, only shame and regret. This shows that merely beholding an attractive figure, that is, observing seductive images, can open a doorway for spiritual decline, leading to unforeseen consequences. Like a fragile tree before the wind, once shaken, one is easily swept away by further temptations. Today, the media and responsible agencies often wonder why the morality of the youth declines so rapidly. Many causes are sought, but one primary reason is the rampant spread of provocative images and content in society. From street advertisements to films, literature, and the internet, young people's frequent exposure to these images causes their minds to waver, opening many doors to degradation as they are lured by unhealthy activities, overindulgence, and, ultimately, a broken life. If the state exercised stricter control over unwholesome images and content, society might reduce degradation and preserve moral integrity. Similarly, if parents could guide their children with a clearer perspective on this issue, it would be immensely beneficial. Girls should be taught to dress modestly and discreetly, while boys should be guided to maintain a respectful attitude, not looking at others with inappropriate intentions, keeping their hearts pure. If so, society would avoid much moral decay. This requires not only parental education but also support from teachers in schools. Nowadays, many places are experimenting with sex education in schools. But if this teaching is not conducted by experienced, ethical individuals, it may yield negative effects. Only those with the discipline of spiritual practice and deep moral understanding can teach this subject appropriately, helping students avoid enticement and temptation. Otherwise, the teaching may only draw paths for the deer to run, making youth more prone to straying. It is time for us to uphold a healthy culture that does not encourage people to develop the habit of viewing others' bodies, thus avoiding psychological disturbance. By not being swept up in unwholesome allure, each person will gain more resistance against degrading temptations and contribute to a better society. For monks, this issue is even more crucial. In ancient societies, even with an atmosphere of modesty, when a laywoman appeared in elegant attire, it could still cause some monks to falter. Today, with the influence of modern culture and the prevalence of revealing, open attire, monks need an extraordinary degree of determination and an even firmer stance to maintain inner purity. Without this, they will easily be unsettled and lose control. Therefore, the commitment to practice impurity contemplation today must be heightened many times over compared to the past. Otherwise, monks may struggle to maintain their minds amidst the temptations of modern life. In ancient times, before society was influenced by foreign cultures, spiritual practice was simpler. Today, the level of determination and perseverance must be 100-fold to overcome temptations and sustain inner purity. In Buddhism, the concept of Mara or Mara is not an abstract notion but a real influence that can impact the human mind. In the sutra about subduing Mara in the Nikaya, the Buddha taught that if Mara wants to disrupt the monks, it must induce feelings of anger or arrogance within them, creating an entry point through which Mara can affect their minds. When monks become angry, Mara can infiltrate the minds of lay people, causing them to offend or provoke the monks, which could lead the monks to lose their purity in practice. The Buddha instructed the monks to cultivate patience and compassion so that they would not give in to anger, preventing Mara from exerting any influence. Mara then changed tactics by influencing the lay people to praise and make offerings to the monks, hoping to make the monks feel prideful. When the monks harbor pride, Mara can invade their minds and cause them to descend into degradation. With profound insight, the Buddha taught the monks to cultivate humility, to view themselves as mere dust, thereby preventing the rise of pride and thwarting Mara's attempts. From this story, we see that Mara can only exert its influence when there is an opening, a psychological weakness. Gazing at the youthful, attractive body of a woman can disturb the mind and open a door for Mara's influence. This is why meditating on impurity and maintaining mindfulness are essential in the practice of Buddhism. In the scriptures, Mara is often referred to as a type of external demon that can affect human minds, leading them astray and into wrongdoing. In today's society, when one becomes disturbed by the habit of gazing at the opposite sex, they can be easily drawn into other temptations, referred to as Mara in specific contexts. For instance, someone obsessed with drugs is controlled by the demon of drugs, a person fond of drinking is led by the demon of alcohol, and those who indulge in reckless lifestyles are haunted by demonic influences of their habits. Likewise, sports fanatics may joke about being possessed by Maradona, cinema enthusiasts are entranced by Marilyn Monroe, music lovers by Madonna, gamblers by the gambling demon, and those living violent lives are under the threat of the mafia. Just a minor disturbance in the mind, a single exposed weakness, can open the floodgates to various pathways of degradation. A person who once lived a respectable life may, due to seeing a provocative image or inappropriate film, fall into a whirlpool of immorality, leading to the downfall of their morals and personal life. The teacher once knew a family of Buddhist followers who were once decent and happy, but a friend gave the husband an indecent film, and out of curiosity, he secretly watched it at night when his wife and children were asleep. Gradually, he fell into immorality, drinking, and womanizing, eventually leading to divorce and family ruin. The teacher met him again after more than 10 years. But there was no joy in his eyes, only shame and regret. This example shows that even just gazing at the attractive form, looking at alluring body images, can open a door to spiritual downfall, leading to unforeseen consequences. Like a tree that sways in the wind, once disturbed, people are easily tempted and drawn into further enticements. Today, the media and responsible agencies often wonder why youth morality is deteriorating so quickly. They search for many reasons, but one significant cause is the prevalence of provocative images and content in society, from the streets, movies, books, newspapers, to the internet. The youth are exposed to these images excessively, making their minds easily disturbed and opening many paths to moral decay, such as succumbing to peer pressure to engage in unhealthy activities, excessive partying, and ultimately personal disintegration. If there were stricter management and control from the state over inappropriate images and content, society could reduce instances of moral decay and uphold a stronger ethical foundation. Parents, too, if they could guide their children with a clear perspective on these matters, would be of great help. Daughters should be taught to dress modestly and respectfully. while sons should be encouraged to maintain a serious demeanor, refraining from looking at others with inappropriate thoughts, keeping their hearts pure. Such guidance not only from parents but also from teachers in schools could prevent much moral decay. Some schools are experimenting with teaching sex education, but if this teaching is not handled by experienced and ethical educators, it could have adverse effects. Only those with a determined commitment to spiritual practice and a profound understanding of ethics can teach this subject correctly, helping students avoid temptation. Otherwise, it would simply be paving the path for indulgence, making it easier for young people to fall. It is time to emphasize a healthy culture that does not encourage people to indulge in gazing at the bodies of others, thus avoiding psychological disturbances. When one is not swayed by inappropriate attractions, they build resilience against temptations of degradation and contribute to a better society. For monks, this matter is even more critical. In ancient society, despite discretion, even a modestly dressed woman could still cause some monks to be disturbed. Today, with the influence of modern culture, revealing and provocative attire is common. Monks must have an even stronger determination and a firmer stance than ever to keep their minds pure. Without it, they are easily swayed and lose control. Therefore, the resolve to practice and meditate on impurity today must be intensified many times over compared to the past. Without such resolve and perseverance, monks will struggle to maintain their inner peace in the face of life's temptations. The Buddha always taught that we must see beyond time to recognize the impermanence of beauty. Young people often fall in love without understanding impermanence, chasing after superficial appearances. However, those who understand the Dharma must look further, so that when beauty fades, love can still endure if it is based on deeper foundations. Some may argue, if this person becomes old, I will find someone younger. This notion contradicts the Buddhist teaching on the contemplation of impermanence. When one loves and desires to claim someone as their own, the responsibility of lifelong care is unavoidable. That person must be attentive, caring, and remember important occasions like birthdays and anniversaries. Failing to do so could lead to misunderstandings or fractures in the relationship. Moreover, no one can guarantee that the person they love will always be gentle and virtuous. Sometimes, a spouse may become angry, irritable, and unsympathetic when we are busy. It is in those moments that true endurance and responsibility for each other are tested. We must think carefully before falling in love and committing to someone, because once we bring them into our home, we are responsible for them for life. This responsibility is not simple, and we must consider whether we can bear it. Therefore, the teacher, with a frail body, chose to decline such commitments early. Those who are strong enough can decide for themselves. Lifelong responsibility is not easy. Carelessness can lead to tense situations such as mistrust, arguments, or having to face a partner's demands. Hence, the teacher advises that instead of bearing the weight of a demanding relationship, one should choose the path of spiritual practice. Live peacefully, and love all beings voluntarily, without binding attachments. Love in spiritual practice is serene and noble. It involves caring for, teaching, guiding, and encouraging everyone to love each other with a voluntary heart. This type of love is completely different from familial love, which is full of obligations and responsibilities. However, some may argue that they do not need responsibility and only seek pleasure and comfort by paying for it. To those people, the teacher would use a different argument, which will be explained further in the upcoming Buddha's birthday sermon. The argument is, enjoyment actually consumes one's accumulated merits. Each of us is born with a certain amount of merit, accumulated over many lifetimes. Every time we enjoy a pleasure, whether small or large, we deplete that merit. For example, if someone has a total of 1.000 units of merit, each indulgence in pleasure decreases that amount. When the merits are too depleted, one can no longer experience happiness. This explains why indulgence, if uncontrolled and excessive, depletes merit and leads to a life devoid of joy, ending in emptiness. If we continue to deplete our merits to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of life, we will gradually lose our good fortune and face suffering, illness, scarcity, and frustration. When our total merit is exhausted, we will no longer have the opportunity to live in peace and tranquility or delve deeply into the spiritual path, where greater happiness awaits. Those who know how to preserve their merits and focus on meditation practice will enjoy the blessings of spiritual practice and profound inner peace, a joy incomparable to worldly pleasures. The happiness derived from meditation is subtle, noble, and more enduring than any earthly pleasure. If we do not waste our merits on fleeting pleasures, but instead use them for spiritual practice and the development of the mind, we can attain the happiness of a saint, an enduring joy that spans many lifetimes. However, if someone says that merely admiring another person's body without seeking possession is harmless, we need to explain that even a slight disturbance in the mind when looking at someone is a mistake for those committed to spiritual practice. Even the smallest tremor is a sign of mental agitation, and this must not happen. When seeing another person and feeling attraction arise, a practitioner must immediately remind themselves of 4 things. First, the recognition of impermanence, understanding that this person will age and die. Second, awareness of the lifelong responsibility if they choose to possess that person. Third, the realization of the depletion of accumulated merit. And fourth, the awareness that even the smallest mental disturbance disrupts the tranquility of the mind. If someone says that this is too difficult and strict, we must respond that the path to sainthood is not easy. It requires discipline, subtlety, and great determination. Without perseverance and patience, people will continue to drift in the cycle of birth and death. But if one has chosen the path of practice and wishes to reach a state of holiness, they must overcome all challenges and temptations. When seeing someone and feeling attracted, one must immediately remind themselves of the impermanence of beauty, the responsibility of relationships, and the consequences of merit depletion. By doing so, they can maintain a pure mind and continue progressing on the spiritual path. If we indulge in pleasure with the opposite sex, we must control our minds to ensure our inner calm is not disturbed. When encountering the body of the opposite sex, we must immediately reflect on 4 aspects to maintain determination in practice. 1. Awareness of impermanence. Remember that beauty and pleasure are temporary and will fade with time. 2. Binding responsibility. Understand that being attached to someone means lifelong responsibility, which can bring difficulties. 3. Depletion of merit. Indulging in pleasure depletes accumulated merit, reducing the chance of future happiness. 4. Mental control. Assess whether the mind remains calm or has been disturbed by external influences. Practitioners must always control their minds, not only when facing temptations but as part of daily practice. Guarding the senses, controlling the mind, and maintaining vigilance in eating habits will help practitioners stay resilient against temptations. Moderation in eating. During the Buddha's time, monks had to go on alms rounds and could not choose their food. They accepted what was offered, including non-vegetarian food, as long as it did not violate the precepts. However, eating in moderation reduces the physiological effects on the psyche, helping maintain mental stability. Vegetarianism aids practitioners by lessening physical influences and maintaining mental purity. Diligent study and practice, regular learning, reflecting on teachings, and step-by-step practice are essential for keeping the mind free from the influence of evil spirits. Demons can only invade if there is a weakness in the mind. Much like how spells work only if there is an opening. Worshipping the Buddha with reverence helps protect practitioners from evil spirits and external negative influences. The Buddha clearly taught that demons are real forces that can only affect the mind when it is not carefully guarded. In the discourse on defeating demons, he explained that they disturb monks by inciting anger or arrogance, creating an entry point for demonic influence and spreading negative thoughts. The Buddha instructed the monks to practice patience and maintain compassion to prevent anger and to contemplate humility to avoid arrogance. This demonstrates that maintaining mental vigilance and adhering to the principles of practice are essential for preserving the purity of the mind. Venerable Sariputta taught that if someone frequently gives alms but does not encourage others to do so, in the next life, that person will be wealthy but lonely, without close companions. On the other hand, if a person does not give alms but often encourages others to do good deeds, they will not be wealthy in the next life but will have many affluent relatives who share their wealth, even if they personally struggle to make money. A person who neither gives alms nor encourages others to do good will endure poverty, loneliness, and lack of close relationships. Conversely, someone who both gives and encourages others to give will be blessed with significant wealth and a large circle of relatives in future lives. Venerable Sariputta explained clearly the relationship between karma and the connection between merit and relationships. To become relatives or close companions, merit must be compatible. If two people have a significant difference in merit, their relationship may not endure. The teacher once witnessed a case like this, a wife with great merit and a husband with less, resulting in their eventual separation. When in past lives we encouraged each other to do good and shared blessings, we reap shared benefits and become connected in future lives. Therefore, if we know the Dharma and practice giving, we should encourage others to do so as well. Many Buddhists have the noble heart to do this. For instance, when a Buddha statue needs to be donated to a temple, instead of donating the entire amount themselves, they invite their brothers and sisters to contribute. Even if it is only 5.000 or 20.000 dong. This allows everyone to create merit together. Even if the initiator could afford the full amount, they choose to share the opportunity to create merit with their peers, so everyone can partake in and benefit from the virtuous act. Venerable Sariputta emphasized that if a person frequently gives but does not motivate others to do good, they will enjoy wealth in future lives but remain isolated. Conversely, those who do not give directly but inspire others to do so will not be wealthy but will have prosperous relatives, allowing them to share in the blessings, even if they find it difficult to earn money themselves. A person who neither gives nor encourages others will face poverty and loneliness, lacking family or friends. But those who both give and inspire others will enjoy wealth and be surrounded by a large circle of relatives in future lives. Venerable Sariputta's teachings clarify the connection between karma and relationships. Relationships are hard to sustain when one partner has much more merit than the other. Equal merit helps maintain connections and creates strong bonds. Many Buddhists understand this and encourage others to join in acts of giving, even if they are capable of doing it alone. They wish for everyone to contribute, even a small amount, to build shared merit, fostering closeness and harmony in the future. Some people give with selfish intentions, wanting all the merit for themselves, which results in having no friends or loved ones to share joy with. On the other hand, those who encourage others to join in good deeds gain friends and companions, creating a life full of happiness and connectedness. A story about giving and compassion is illustrated through the tale of Devdatta. When a wealthy man wanted to offer a beautiful robe, people suggested giving it to Devdatta because he appeared frequently and was more approachable than Sariputta. Devdatta was very pleased with the robe, but although it was beautiful, it did not reflect any sense of dignity when he wore it. The Buddha explained, a person who does not live diligently, lacks compassion, and does not uphold true virtue is unworthy of wearing the monk's robe. The robe only looks beautiful on someone with a pure heart and sincere practice. The Buddha recounted that in a past life, Devdatta was a hunter. He frequently ventured into the forest to hunt and was commissioned to hunt elephants for their tusks. In that forest, there was a large herd of elephants and a Paksabuddha who lived in seclusion. The elephants, sensing holiness, often came to pay respect and offer fruits and flowers to the Paksabuddha. Devdatta, the hunter, observed the elephants' reverence for the Paksabuddha. One day, while the Paksabuddha was bathing, Devdatta stealthily stole his robe, disguised himself as an ascetic, and sat there to deceive the elephants. Using this guise, he managed to kill many elephants. When Bodhisattva Shakyamuni, in one of his past lives, was reborn as the leader of the elephants, he discovered the hunter's scheme and acted to thwart this danger. The Bodhisattva confronted the hunter and caused him to abandon the guise of a true monk to commit malicious deeds. The Buddha narrated this story to emphasize that, since ancient times, Devdatta had not been worthy of wearing the monk's robe. The Buddha said, "Anyone who wears the monk's robe without leaving behind impurities, without self-restraint, and without sincerity is unworthy of the monk's robe. Only those who have abandoned impurities, strictly adhere to the precepts, exercise self-control, and live truthfully are truly worthy of wearing the monk's robe." This teaching also reflects that karma can manifest outwardly, no matter how finely a garment is crafted. If the wearer lacks virtue, it will not look dignified. This indicates that the person's merit is not sufficient. Conversely, someone with merit, even in simple clothing, exudes natural grace. The teacher noticed this during his early days of monastic life. Although the monks of that time were poor and wore simple clothing, those with merit made even plain robes appear genuine and dignified. After the liberation of the country, it was a time of poverty, and monks had little clothing when they ordained. At that time, ordination was difficult because it required enough fabric to make 3 sets of robes, one for formal occasions, one for travel, and one for wearing underneath. But in reality, fabric was hard to come by then. The monks often had to share clothing, sometimes even sharing one robe. When one monk needed to go out, he would wear the shared robe and then hang it up for the next person to use when he returned. This robe, though simple and sparse, looked different on each person who wore it. Some looked beautiful and fitting, while on others, it did not seem suitable. The teacher believed that those who looked good in it were people with virtuous conduct and good character. On the other hand, those with coarse or rough behavior did not wear it well. The teacher realized this more than 15 years ago. Later, when he read the verse, "The robe does not make the monk," he saw its profound truth. However, the robe does partly reflect the merit and discipline of the wearer. In both life and practice, if outward appearance aligns with inner character, it looks harmonious and balanced. Otherwise, it can seem awkward or out of place. It takes keen observation to notice this. Therefore, when a person dons the monk's robe, they are declaring to the world, "I am someone who upholds the precepts, has a vision of enlightenment, and shows compassion for all beings. I am diligent in my practice." However, if one makes such a declaration but does not live up to the robe's symbolic meaning, they will lose significant merit. Thus, until one truly embodies the qualities required, they should not wear the monk's robe. Monks should also be discerning when accepting disciples and not allow them to wear the monk's robe too easily. This concludes today's teaching. Wishing everyone joy and peace. Homage to the original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha.